So, hey guys, today we have a very special guest with us, an international communication coach, a corporate trainer who helps global teams communicate better across cultures. Let's warmly welcome Amanda Boyce, and the stage is all yours. So, we all are very curious to know about you from you. So, kindly, please take over.
Thank you so much, Ritu. What a lovely introduction. How much time do we have for an introduction? Just kidding. I'll try and be nice and concise. So, a bit about myself. I'm Australian, if you can't tell by my logo in the background, my name down here, and my accent. But I live in Chandigarh, and I've been living in Chandigarh for, it'll be 7 years in June, actually. So, I moved here from Australia to get married. My husband is Indian. And I moved here with no job. I wasn't allowed to work with the visa that I had. No plan, no real kind of, plan of anything. So during COVID, because I was here during COVID, I was feeling a little bit bored and lonely because of lack of human interaction. So I decided to look for a job online teaching English. So that's sort of how it started. I ended up getting a freelance position on a platform. I was teaching just general English on there. And then eventually I started focusing on Australian English, which is what I do now. And I've been teaching Australian English in the accent for over 5 years, almost 5.5 years. And last year I did my corporate training certification here in India online. And now I want to help basically do what I'm doing with my students in Australia and help companies, Australian companies here in India, improve their communication, pronunciation, all of those sorts of things, where they are communicating with Australian clients and customers.
Wow, unparalleled and so mesmerizing. So, Amanda, what is the basic difference that you detect between, say, Australian and Indian accent?
So the main one is probably the pronunciation of R, or in my case, the lack of the pronunciation of R. So Australian English is non-rhotic. So to those who don't know what that means, it just means the rhoticity is the pronunciation of R. So when there is a lack of that, it's non-rhotic, which you'll find in Australian English, British English, South African English, New Zealand English. So basically those colonized countries, I think, by the British. So we don't say R as much, whereas in Indian English, that R tends to be pronounced quite heavily. So it's rolled. The tongue is hitting the roof of the mouth when that R is pronounced. So that's probably the biggest difference that I can hear and that I've seen is that R sound, or R. I don't say the R.
Such a meticulous detection. I must appreciate that. The way you explained in detail, I think that our audience will be benefited from whatever you have explained so beautifully. So, Amanda, my next question from you is you have been dealing with foreign clients for a lot of, for many years, right? So, do foreign clients really they care about accent?
Personally, I don't think so. I think the most important thing is intelligibility and pronunciation. So a lot of people think that accent training is removing their accent. Everyone has an accent. I have an accent. It's called the Australian accent. But the thing about global companies is that if you are working and servicing global clients, you need to be understood. So that means improving things like pronunciation, your tone. Like we were just saying before we hit record, my Hindi has kind of my Australian intonation crossed through it. It works both ways. So if your mother tongue doesn't have a lot of intonation and you speak English with that lack of intonation, it can come across as a bit blunt, rude, maybe you're not interested. So I think rather than accent, intelligibility is key.
And we all find ourselves in hot waters when it comes to clarity or grammar. So would you mind just reflecting on this actual situation, what is happening, that should we worry about clarity or grammar?
I would say clarity. That's not saying that grammar is not important. It absolutely is. But I think people focus too much on grammar and not enough on clarity and being understood. So I think on improving your speaking and pronunciation and being clear when speaking is priority. And then, working on grammar is something that you can do on the side. They do go hand in hand, but I think prioritize the clarity and then work on grammar.
Oh, I hope that grammar is definitely an incremental part of the process. The problem is that we don't know the structure, the framework, how to incorporate grammar in spoken English. That is, I think, the real fatigue. And people feel so much
Yeah.
stressed. Yeah, they separate spoken English
Yeah.
and grammar. While if they incorporate it so
Yeah.
beautifully, they can work on their complex structures and they can take their
Yeah.
spoken English to another level. So you have been dealing with international clients for a very long time. And I think that you might have detected one common mistake Indians make in professional communication.
I think it all depends on I guess, the country or the market that you're working in. Because again, I focus more on the Australian market and Australian English, but there are things that people say in Indian English, which are completely valid and completely normal in Indian English and here. But when they're spoken in different countries, it can come across as a little bit confusing, like Indianisms and certain phrases and things like that. They're not wrong. It just depends on the market. So if you want, let's say, people are improving English for a good job in India, focusing on those things, it's not going to really matter because they're common here, right? So I think it's a bit hard to answer this because it all depends on sort of the market that you are hoping to work in.
Sometimes they say that professional tone is very important. So is it really matter to worry that we need to work on our tonality, we need to work on bass, we need to work on intonation? Is it really very important according to you? Like,
yeah. Again, I think it also depends on the market. For people working with Australian colleagues, clients, and customers, absolutely. Because if there's that lack of tonality or lack of intonation or lack of emotion, which it can be perceived as rude, whereas here it's just being efficient. People are, sticking to the script. They're focusing on being polite and getting things done. But in Australia, that can be, misinterpreted as maybe being a bit rude or lack of emotion and lack of emotions. So again, I think it really depends on who you're servicing and things like that. But focusing on intonation, I think, is important regardless, because there's something called, in Australia, it's known as the Australian question intonation, but it has many names like inflection, a high inflection, I forget the other names outside of Australia, but basically it's high rising terminal is the other name of it. It's where your tone rises at the end of a sentence. Now, if someone uses that kind of inflection, it's going to make them seem less confident and a bit confused about what they're saying. So it's going to kind of take away their credibility. And I think focusing on that side of intonation, regardless of who you're servicing or where you're working, is really important. An example of that would be, hi, my name's Amanda and I'm a communications trainer. And I sound a little bit unsure, as opposed to, hi, my name's Amanda, I'm a communications trainer. So you're sounding more confident by not using that rising tone at the end.
okay, so you need not to sound so much scripted. Otherwise, it would sound a little bit under stress. We need to be genuine, and confidence is the
Yeah.
game changer. Exactly. So you mean to say that are Australians more direct in communication?
In parts, yes. So definitely. Something I've noticed here living in India, as I said, it's been almost 7 years. It'll be 7 years in June. I have struggled with the less direct communication when I've called call centers or customer service for help, where people will tend to tell you what they think you want to hear just to reassure you, even if it's the wrong information. Whereas in Australia, they prefer transparency. If you know that something's going to take a week, you tell a week. You don't tell them 2 days and then keep giving them false hope when they call up after 2 days. Not saying that's everyone here. It's just been with my own kind of experiences. But yeah, I think being direct in those sort of situations and not giving false hope, that's sort of expected over there. But over here, it's very normal.
Fantastic. So it has nothing to do with rudeness. This is just has to do with honesty. So yeah, we need to be honest while communicating. You can't deliver, a confusing message, and it can make your clients feel irritable. So that's so true, and that is also a genuine approach to customers. So true. And learn this language at the drop of a hat. So you are the right person to ask this question. What is one quick tip you would like to give non-native speakers to improve workplace communication, especially workplace communication?
Oh, gosh, there's so many ways. Let me have a think about that. That's a really great question. So workplace communication, you can think of verbal communication and non-verbal communication. So verbal communication is the words you speak, but studies have been done where they look at the most important parts of communication in the workplace, and it's actually not the words you speak. That's only a small percentage of what people look at. It's the non-verbal communication, your facial expressions, the tone you use, your body language. So I think to improve your workplace communication, focus on those non-verbal aspects. So the way you present yourself, whether you're sitting upright or you're slouching, think about, again, the intonation sorts of things. That is technically a part of verbal, but again, verbal is just the words you speak. Think of vocabulary and things like that. But focusing on all the other things that happen when you're speaking with someone, if you're able to work on those, you can work on your executive presence, you can work on your confidence in the workplace, you can deliver your message effectively.
Wow. So gestures, communication aspects, how you sit, how you present yourself is very important. So it doesn't have to do anything with how intelligent are you. Like we normally say, first impression is the last impression. You need to be presentable. You need to dress up properly. You know how to, I mean, what kind of expressions you need to put on your face. You need to sound confidence. That is the most, even you have butterflies in your stomach, but you need to sound confidence. That is the most important part. Sometimes people know everything, but because of lack of confidence, they are, they crash. I mean, their mind goes blank because they are not so confident. So confidence plays a very important role. But yeah, apart from confidence, rehearsals are very important. To dress up properly is very important. Your gestures are very important. Your facial expressions are very important. Your expressions and your confidence must go hand in hand if you want to hit the nail on the head. I think so, right? Piece of advice for those Indians, especially who are working with global clients.
Slow down your pace. You might be a very comfortable, confident talker in your mother tongue or speaking English in India, but if people aren't used to your accent or your way of speaking fast is a huge barrier to effective communication. So if you are able to slow down, it gives the listener time to process what you're saying. It also gives you time to think about what you're going to say next. A lot of people think that speaking fast equals fluent, but if you're speaking to someone for the first time who maybe they don't have a very multicultural neighborhood or area that they live in, maybe they haven't spoken with many Indian people before, they need time to process. And if you are rushing through your script and reading, really, really fast, or what you're trying to say and you're trying to get the message out very quickly, going to cause some barriers to communication. So work on slowing down and work on emphasizing those key words that you want the listener to focus on.
Fantastic, fantastic. So pauses are also one of the strongest concepts. If you pause, it will give you time to have a better communication with your clients, and you can share a kind of bond between you and your client. That will be so wonderful. So, Amanda, I want a feedback from you about this quick call between us. How did you like this?
I loved it. It was so great. I always really enjoy these sorts of environments, podcasts and things like that. I think that, I don't know, it's just really great. It's really great to connect with people who are doing something similar like I am, teaching English or communication. And yeah, I really enjoyed it and it was really great. Thank you.